presented by Kenneth Rowland and Jordan Schmidt. Thank you for joining us. This meeting will be available after the workshop on our YouTube channel. So it is being recorded. You'll have access to it after this. Give us a few days and then we'll post it on our YouTube channel. This is informational. It's not intended to be all-inclusive. You're not going to be NOTAM experts at the end, but you'll at least know a little bit more about NOTAMs, how to access the NOTAM Manager system, how to file NOTAMs. Please mute your microphones until you're ready to say something. If you have a question during the presentation, feel free to put it in the chat, and you will have time for a Q&A session after the presentation. With that said, I am going to stop sharing, and I'd like to introduce Mr. Kenneth Rowland.
Good morning. Thanks for that, Ray, and thanks for giving us the opportunity to present to the Kansas aviation community. So we know we have a lot of different experience levels of the airports here. We know we have the 30-year airport manager with a lot of aviation experience. We also know we have the city or county employee that your boss pointed at you and said you're now the airport manager and don't have a lot of aviation experience. That's the party that Ray has kind of wanted me and Jordan to kind of tailor it to. That's what we're going to do. So if we use phrases or acronyms or anything that you don't understand, don't hesitate. There's the ability to raise your hand on this or whatever. We'll answer those questions, but we don't want to exclude the experienced aviation. So if someone in the that 30-year airport manager has a very complex NOTAM question, I'm going to say, Jordan, you got it, and I'll let Jordan Smith. Jordan works with the United States NOTAM office. I'm going to let him go first. So Jordan, if you want to introduce yourself and start it, you can take it away.
Yeah, thanks, Ken. Welcome, everybody, and thanks, Ray, for inviting me to this. Always appreciate getting out there and talking to the actual airports about NOTAMs. I'm going to go ahead and present just a little slide deck I put together for this meeting. Just give me a thumbs up or let me know if you can see the screen, and then we'll start there.
Yes, sir.
Jordan.
All right, perfect. So just quick introductions. Ken introduced me. I am Jordan Schmidt. I currently serve the DOT as Quality Control and Training Specialist for FAA's U.S. NOTAM, or Notice to Air Missions Office. So that's the acronym NOTAM. I will try my best to limit the acronyms for you all, and we have them all spelled out here for you as well. So more affectionately, we're known as the USNOF. This is a 24/7, 365 office. It's manned by 12 air traffic control NOTAM expert specialists, and generally, just on an average, they'll look at 2 million NOTAMs a year. And those are NOTAMs that could be coming in from domestic airports, international as well. My prior experience before coming to the FAA was with the flight service. If you don't know flight service helps pilots with pre-flight briefings. They also have a flight data section that helps airports with NOTAM origination, and then also the in-flight radio portion of that. So, as Ken said, I was told there's a wide array of people on this meeting today, some with extensive NOTAM knowledge and some with not. So this is really geared towards just the basics of the NOTAM and its purpose. So what is a NOTAM? Well, a NOTAM is a notice containing information essential to personnel concerned with flight operations, but not known far enough in advance to be publicized by other means. It states the abnormal status of a component of the National Airspace System, not the normal status. So it's a way of getting information out that's not already available or is changed to what is available. NOTAMs indicate the real time and abnormal status of the NAS impacting every user. And when we say NAS, again, National Airspace System. NOTAMs concern the establishment, condition, or change of any facility, service, procedure, or hazard in the NAS. If we think about the NAS, it's a rather large structure that involves a lot of different components and a lot of different users, both if we're looking at pilot side or the originating side for NOTAMs. NOTAMs have a unique language using special contractions to make communication more efficient. So we talked about at the beginning of this, lots of acronyms, but we also go by international standards for contraction usage. The purpose of that is to not have a paragraph long NOTAM, try and condense it. But that does cause a problem with people having to learn what these different contractions are. All right, so NOTAMs affect all users of the NAS. Here we have different groups within the NAS. Not everybody obviously represented here. Some of them are originators, some of them are users. So obviously a pilot would be a user of the NAS. Flight inspection would be a user and an originator of NOTAM in the NAS. And here's some examples. So we mentioned some contraction usage. If you look at the runway closure in purple in the middle, pretty straightforward, pretty succinct. This NOTAM says that runway 0321 is closed, CLSD. And those contractions, again, can get a lot more complicated if you're not familiar with them. In the top right, we see there's an airspace NOTAM for aircraft within an area defined as a 1 nautical mile radius of FSO, surface at 3,000 feet daily. So NOTAMs were designed, again, to be, unfortunately, they were designed to be easy to read, succinct and short. But over many years, as more and more people are using the NOTAM system and more people are contributing NOTAMs to the system, sometimes things can get lost. And it's just a deep list of NOTAMs for each flight. We'll talk more about that in a second. So why are these important? Well, they provide that real-time information on important changes to components of the NAS, such as we could have runway closures, airport closures, surface conditions such as snow and ice accumulation, construction projects or other equipment on airport services, the navigational aid outages, fuel availability, lighting status, whether it's on runways, taxiways, or aprons, and so much more. So pilots rely on NOTAMs to make planning decisions that could influence their safety of their flight. What information? So as you airport operators, owners, and managers, what information do you really need to put out on a NOTAM? Well, public use airport information is published in the airport chart supplements. So not to pick on Ellsworth here, but it's just what I grabbed this morning from Kansas, the first one I saw. It's a good example of a general aviation public use airport. It's got a combination of runways, hard surface runways, as well as grass runways. So this information on your airport, when you became public and registered as an airport, gets published, and that gets updated every 56 days. So if there's any changes to that, those would need to be reflected in this chart supplement. The information within the chart supplement is the very basics on what the airport provides. So the types of runways that it provides, any services. In this example, we can see that they have fuel, and the reels are pilot controlled as well. You also have the option to put in airport remarks. In this instance, they talk about the times that the fuel is available for self-serve, and then you can see a very small print. If you read runway 35 approach, they mention that there's tall fences and towers in stadium floodlights. This is just very general basic knowledge. This information is used by pilots to plan their trip. When they're going to a new location they're not familiar with, they're going to pull up the chart supplement, read through, make sure they have all the frequencies that they need, and they have any additional notes that are specific to that airport. So any information that's different than what's listed in your chart supplement, for sure, if it changes, it for sure should go out as a NOTAM. Because if all a pilot has is this chart supplement to look at and no NOTAMs listed, the pilot is assuming that everything listed in the chart supplement is what they can expect when they arrive at the airport. So again, any changes to this publication should be listed as a NOTAM. Examples could be simply runway closures, taxiway closures, apron closures, lighting outages, but it doesn't stop there. Any of the activity that's occurring on an airport, this chart supplement won't tell us that there's snow plows on the runway, for instance, or there's a crane at the end of the runway, or other construction equipment, or even just work in progress for mowing. This chart supplement will not tell us that specifically. So that type of information can be relayed to the pilot as a NOTAM. I have a link there within the presentation. If you aren't familiar with the chart supplements, you can go in and look at your airport's chart supplement following that link. So what's the pilot required? The onus is on the pilot. Per 14 CFR 91-103, which is a code of federal regulations. Before a flight, pilots are required to gather and familiarize themselves with all relevant information concerning the flight. So this can include weather, or should include weather, forecasts, fuel requirements, any alternate airports necessary, traffic delays, runway lengths at the intended airport, and any other pertinent details about the route and aircraft condition, ensuring they can make an informed decision about the safety of the flight. So there's a lot of information to go through as a pilot. As being a flight service pre-flight briefer before, doing it professionally for a flight that just takes place in state, it could take up to 10 minutes to go through all this information as a professional. So if pilots are doing this on their own, which they are allowed to do, now that we have technology advances, they can do this pre-flight planning online, it still takes a lot of times. And when it comes to NOTAMs, like I said, I mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, there could be hundreds of NOTAMs along a very small route of flight. So getting the information correct and having it stand out for your airport is important to the pilot. So airport operator requirements, who's really required by federal law to do this? Well, it's separated into really three different categories. Certificated airports, Part 139 certificated airports, they're required to enter NOTAMs in accordance with the AC, and I have it listed there, AC 150, 5200, 28G. I'm sure Ken might mention that as well. Also, federally funded airports. So if they're part of the airport improvement program, the federal program, they are also required to follow that AC and issue the airports. I just did a quick search. I pulled up some history for the AIP in 2022 and saw that there were 79 airports in Kansas that were receiving federal funds. So 79 airports, they should be following procedures and issuing NOTAMs on their airport conditions. Non-federally funded airports, so if you're not receiving any money or haven't received any money from the federal government, they're requested to enter NOTAMs. So if you're a public use airport listed in the chart supplement, you are requested to enter NOTAMs for your airport conditions, and in doing so, in accordance with the AC. As far as the state requirements, I know there's AIP programs within states. I'm sure Kansas has their own AIP program in following whatever applicable requirements that you have within that to fall, if it includes issuing NOTAMs. How do you issue NOTAMs? Well, in the past, there was really only one way to do it, which is call flight service. That was their bread and butter back in the day. So it's still available. The key here is when you call flight service, you are talking to a professional that specializes in NOTAMs. So if you are just getting started and you're not sure how to format a NOTAM, this group of individuals is significantly helpful. They can walk you through exactly what you're doing, ask you questions to help understand better so that they can publish a NOTAM that is accurate to whatever situation you're trying to convey to pilots. So if you're not sure, definitely call flight service and the helpful individuals over there will walk you through. So we talked a little bit about technology improving for the pilot side on briefings. Well, it's also improved for the NOTAM originator as well. And Ken is going to talk extensively about this, but it's NOTAM Manager. So this is an application that's self-serve, web-based, that you can access on the computer. Once you have permission and you've done all the requirements, you are allowed to originate NOTAMs for your airport, and those that you list as airport personnel as well will be able to access and originate NOTAMs. So again, this is specific to your airport, and it's a very easy self-serve tool with drop downs and maps. Ken will show you that helps you format a NOTAM without having that subject matter expertise on how a NOTAM is actually formatted. So what's the worst case scenario? Well, if we don't publish NOTAMs, that information that we had represented in the chart supplement is all a pilot can go by, then we can have accidents. So this specific picture here, there was an accident in Taylorsville, North Carolina in 2019. So it involved a grass strip, aircraft landing on a grass strip and hitting personnel that were mowing at the end of that grass strip. The pilot did not see that mower until it was too late. and there was not a NOTAM issued for that work in progress for Boeing. So this is the worst case scenario. Safety and pilots' lives are at risk if we don't issue NOTAMs and provide that most up-to-date information on our airport conditions. So feeding into that, as I said, pilots, they rely on that accurate, up-to-date information to make critical decisions that affect the safety of flight. So being a proactive airport operator means being a good steward to the flying community, ensuring timely information on changes to your airport, as they can save lives or save pilots time, money, and most importantly, can save lives. Our mission at the FAA is to provide the safest, most efficient airspace system in the world, and you all can help us with that. So airport owners, operators, and managers, we should do their part to help facilitate this mission. The aviation community is definitely counting on you to be a good steward of your airport because their lives depend on it. And Ken, that's all I have for presentation. If we have any questions specifically about the NOTAM office roles and responsibilities and functions, please don't hesitate to ask. If not, thank you all very much, and it's been a pleasure being here.
Thank you very much, Jordan. I definitely appreciate that presentation. A lot of good information there, especially for the airports that may not have seen that information previously. So again, my name is Ken Rowland. My background is I was a 34-year air traffic controller. I worked at Riverside in Tulsa International, and then I spent 29 years at DFW Approach Control. So that was my background. Like a lot of you, whenever I retired from my air traffic control job, I am now a contract employee with Leidos. We train airports on the use of NOTAM Manager. I'll talk about NOTAM Manager specifically towards the end of my presentation a little bit. But like you, I'd read NOTAMs for 34 years, but once I got in this position, really had to kind of dig into a little deeper of the background. I could read a NOTAM, but what it was actually saying, I didn't really have that expertise. So, like a lot of you, I've had to learn that. If you're a new airport manager, you're having to jump in and learn that as well. So I work with, we call ourselves the NIST contract deployment team. There's 5 of us that work. Most of them work out of the Kansas City office. So they're up there. We have a wealth of Kansas aviation experience. Mark Phelan has probably landed at every airport in Kansas. So we are a pretty good resource for, like I said, especially Kansas, but, obviously we serve the whole country with NOTAM Manager and what we in our task. So Jordan hit on this very well. We separated the Part 139 and non-Part 139, which basically, is commercial aviation, more than 30 passengers or less. We mentioned federal funding. We separate airports into those airports receiving federal funds and not. And then there's these 3 methods. Jordan mentioned flight service. How do you issue NOTAMs? You got flight service. There's a program out called EN2 that not very many airports have, and but you still can't issue NOTAMs via that. If you wanted to, and it's a program that you need to have a little bit of aviation knowledge in order to do that. It doesn't format them like NOTAM Manager does. You need to know formatting the NOTAMs to move forward with that. Jordan's already hit that. What's a NOTAM? He very succinctly hit on that, but it's very crucial for people in their flight operations. And NOTAMs can be for a variety of things on the airport, in flight, navigation, like you said. As an airport manager, your area of focus is going to be on, you can only issue NOTAMs on those components that you quote unquote own. If you if you happen to own your PAPI lights and the FAA doesn't, that's the components that you'll issue NOTAMs on. But they're very vital into the aviation community because that's how they get this advanced information on any conditions they might expect, departure airport, in flight, and arrival airport. I'm going to flip around and I'm going to move to another screen real quick. So here it is. So you're going to see me and Jordan are going to talk about some of the same stuff. We've shared some of the same slides, but this is FAA puts out there just back to basics for airports on um, on issuing NOTAMs. I'm not going to, we're too close to lunch for me to, read an entire PowerPoint to you. I'm going to make this available to everyone, but I just want to hit some of the highlights in it. Obviously, some of the same stuff, but what Jordan has said, not normal status. So I'm going to give you an example of that in just a moment. But anything that's abnormal at the airport is the items that you're going to be issuing NOTAMs on. Contractions are very important. That's how the system categorizes, structures through it. There's a contractions manual. We'll have a couple links to it in here. But if we go through NOTAM Manager, and again, NOTAM Manager is a program where airports are able to issue their own NOTAMs. So we'll talk about it. You don't need to know these contractions. It's going to format it correctly for you. You don't have to worry about it. But if you're reading a NOTAM and you don't know what a contraction means, some of these links that we'll have access to will allow you to look up and make sure you know what that contraction says. The whole building block behind a NOTAM. When you see this information in the upper right, you look at that, and if you're not familiar reading NOTAMs, it's very confusing and everything. As you read them more and more, it becomes very easy to decipher. The accountable party is this first number. This NOTAM is the NOTAM number. First one is the month. Second one is the NOTAM issued for that location for that month. Last one is what is affected, the status, in this case, unserviceable. And it's going to have a start date, start time that includes both the month date and the time in that. Everything's going to be in UTC in the NOTAM. These next slides, I'm just going to go through quickly, but what this is really nice to read if you're getting around there. It talks about every component of that NOTAM. So like I said, I'm not going to slow down. You'll have this PowerPoint. We can go through it and talk about the components at a later, or you can read there. DNOTAMs are those are the most common NOTAMs that you're going to see issued. I'm going to go to right here in the frequently asked questions at the end. There is some good information here. If you don't know what is issued for your airport, I'm going to pull up NOTAM search. You'll be able to take a look at it and see specific NOTAMs at specific airports. There's a value called a perm NOTAM. There are a lot of airports throughout the NAV that have put a perm NOTAM that really needs to be updated, like Jordan mentioned, in your airport directory. I'm going to talk about updating the airport directory in just a moment, but the perm NOTAM is not meant to be there forever, even though it does say permanent. It's basically just a placeholder until you get that in a published form. We get asked this question, and obviously you'll have this in this frequently asked question, but airports don't know how to, if they need to issue some type of NOTAM or information about obstacles, cranes, drones are separate, but anything erected, an antenna around your airport, the OE AAA portal is the resource that we try to tell airport managers that, even though we know airports do it, those individuals who are working around your airport, I would definitely direct them. It's going to create what we call it either an ASR, antenna structural registry, or an ASN, aeronautical study number for those obstructions. And if I have time, I may not have time, but NOTAM Manager has all that information published. This last question just says, you have a NOTAM about to expire. What should you do? Obviously, if it expires, that NOTAM is no longer valid. If it's something as simple as you had an electrician with a work in progress adjacent to the runway working on lights, and he says, hey, I'm running behind, I need another hour. You can obviously call up and extend that NOTAM. If you have NOTAM Manager, it's very easy to extend that NOTAM. But at that time, whenever that time of that ends, that NOTAM is no longer valid. Just want to point that out for your airport. This is it's at the back of this PowerPoint, a great reference with a lot of reference to a lot of information that you as an airport operator, obviously manager, will need to know. Not only has the OE AAA, there's the flight data service, NOTAM search, a lot of these portals. This is a great reference just to have on your desktop somewhere. So let me go back to my original. There it is. So much like Jordan, we both found, wrong one. Sorry. Both had an instance where an aviation accident occurs. We've seen these, they've been pretty recently in the news. A lot of aviation accidents, they happen every year. I mean, they happen on a daily basis. Some of these smaller GAs, we don't want that. The whole ideal behind everything works together in the NAS to try to create a safe environment for them. This one in particular kind of hits home to me. I've went into this airport numerous times. My wife is from this airport, so I'm just familiar with the location. Obviously, I don't know anyone, but this is very similar to what Jordan had in his instance. This happened in September of 23 at Broken Bow, Oklahoma. A young lady, a 27-year-old mother of three, went out and was doing just like in the previous. She was going out mowing adjacent to the runway. I know that she happened to be going south on the east side of the runway. There was also in this a crew baling hay on the opposite side of the runway, just down from her a little bit. This Bonanza comes in and lands. Who knows what reason? There was no NOTAMs published at this time for this accident. All of the bailing operation and all the airport facilities, all the hangars, tie downs, and everything are on the left side. So, we're speculating here. Obviously, this is just the NTSB preliminary report. I have no knowledge of anything happened, but the pilot may have looked over to the left at the bailer, may have looked over where he's going to park his plane. For whatever reason, his right wing struck the young lady mowing, and she did lose her life in this situation. Would the NOTAM have prevented the this accident? Would if the pilot, when he touched down, if he knew that there was mowing on the east side and baling hay on the west side, would he have been looking for those people? We hope so. We don't know if it would, it would stop it, but we like to think it would. So just keep that in mind. These NOTAMs are very important that you issue them. So again, I'm going to give some talk to you about NOTAM Manager just a few minutes. But what is NOTAM Manager? So NOTAM Manager is the ability for airports to issue digital NOTAMs. They're almost instant. They go out to the NAS very earlier. Once they're there, you have the ability at that time to edit. You can, if you want to cancel it, you can do that. You're in total control of that NOTAM. Whenever I give a demo on it, here in a moment, you're going to look at it and say, "Oh, that's kind of it's a extremely intuitive system," and that means when you play with it just a little bit. And when I say play, we do have a full demo site available where you can literally play with it, issuing these NOTAMs. But it formats them for you. You don't have to know it. It's going to error check it. It's not going to let you issue a bad NOTAM. But what the advantage is obviously you're able to be compliant with the NOTAM. For whatever reason, we see it all the time. A lot of airports don't like to pick up the phone and call into the flight service. They say, I'll just listen to the radio and I'll go mow along the runway and it'll be okay. Nothing will happen. Well, we've just showed you two examples where, accidents do happen. These NOTAMs are accurate. The speed, obviously, when you click the button to submit it, it's going to go out into the federal NOTAM system almost immediately, and it's available to the users of your airport in the NAS. It's just seconds thereafter. I will have this information on another slide at the end of this that basically you can keep as a reference. But if you want to talk about NOTAM Manager, see if it's right for you, there's a phone number. It's going to go to voicemail. I can tell you, we answer we'll get those messages very quickly. We'll answer them. There's also a self-cert website, just so you know. It looks like that when you go to that site that you're going to train yourself. That was the initial plan. We're finding out a lot of airports like yourself would go to it. they kind of look at it, feel overwhelmed, and not do that. Well, when you do the self-cert, we're going to basically train you just in a format like this. We're going to go on Teams. We're going to sit there. We're going to make sure you know everything. That's our whole job. This is NOTAM Manager is the preferred method for for airports to issue NOTAM by the FAA. There's over 1,850 airports across the U.S. that use it. I'm sure there's a lot of airports right now that are in this webinar that use NOTAM Manager. Those people can probably tell you that they're very happy with that system. They wouldn't go back to any other way of doing that. I'm not going to go over this. It's in the slideshow, but I at least want to just talk to it a little bit about it. This has to do with FICONs and everything. Ray wanted to, we're going to hit this, and we can talk about it a little bit if we want to, especially some of you that are very familiar with it. But back in 2005, everyone may remember or may not, the Southwest Airlines that went off the end of Midway Airport. The FAA changed their method of issuing surface conditions, field condition reports. It used to be strictly braking action, and the braking action varied so much from pilot to pilot that they went in and said, "Hey, we need to do something about this." That's where they developed, we're going to create a way to assess it outside of what the pilot says it is, since the King Air landing may have a totally different perception of the braking action as opposed to a 737 landing. So they came up with, this is called the RCAM, the Runway Condition Assessment Matrix. And basically what this is going to do is, all you have to do is be able to visually look at your runway and know what's on it. This looks very complex. You really, whether you call in a flight service or you do it on NOTAM Manager, you really don't need to know this. This slide is up here just to show you how it's derived from what you say. If you put in NOTAM Manager or you call flight service and you say, "Hey, I have 1 inch wet snow covering my entire runway," it's going to come in there and it's going to create a runway condition code, an RCC, based on that. And it's based on the thirds of the runway, the touchdown, midpoint, rollout of that runway. I'll definitely give you an example of a surface condition in just a moment, but I just want to show you this matrix so you can look at it and see how it's gathering what's on the runway. I'm going to slide through all of this information, but this is NOTAM Manager, just so you know, and I'll pull up a live site in just a moment. I'm going to scroll through all this. I put all this in there so you do have access to it via the PowerPoint. So at the end, I just put some contact information on this slide as well. There's myself. This is my phone number and my email address. I put Jordan's email in there, but do me a favor. He wears about 4 hats. He is very, very busy. I can answer 90% of your questions. It's just those very tough NOTAM that I may not have the inside knowledge into. If you direct everything to me, if I can't answer it, I'll get Jordan involved. But just use me, please, for your primary contact. Jordan had it up, but I wanted to put it on here. This is the number. So if you want to just call into Leidos Flight Service and issue a NOTAM for your airport, this is the phone number. Just so you know, if you've never done that before, though, you have to be an authorized NOTAM issuer before you can do that. So I would take the time, call them, before you actually do it, and say, "Hey, I'd like to be able to issue NOTAMs at my airport," whatever it is. They'll get that information done. Then after that, you'll be able to call in there and not have a delay in issuing that NOTAM. The Aeronautical Data and Information Portal, I'm going to show you what this looks like, but this is what Jordan was talking about, keeping your airport information updated. A lot of airports aren't familiar with this. I'll bring this up, I think, on the next slide here in just a moment, but there is a link in the website itself. And again, here's that data to contact us at NOTAM Manager. If you want to look at NOTAM Manager, if you want to see if it's right for you, again, this is the way FAA would like airports to issue NOTAM. There's no cost to airports. We train you, we support you, and whatever you need for it, we're going to make sure we take care of you. And there's the 2 methods you could do that. Or again, you can just call me and do it as well. So that's all of that. Let's go through all the many slides I have up currently. So here is what we talked about. This is the, let's back out of this one page. There it is. So this is the airport data and information portal. This is how an airport, you update information at your airport. Before you can do it, you have to register. And then once you've done that, you can log in publicly. So this is public information. You can go to any airport. I'm going to go and bother Jabara. I don't know if they're here, and just show you what it looks like. When I highlight this, I can bring up the advanced search. There's a Google Maps of the airport. It also has links. There must be a helicopter base somewhere right by the airport, but I have two. So let's go to Jabara, and I'm going to look at the facility data. I can come up here, and this is basically the published data that's going out to all sources. From the previous page, if you log in, you're able to edit this data. You know, airport managers change all the time. We know that. This is how you'll update that information. But this has all that public data that Jordan had mentioned. And at the bottom, we'd said earlier that there's two items we mentioned. So published NOTAMs go out there. If you happen to be an airport that you publish that some portion of your VASIs were out, well, you know, that perm NOTAM stays in the system. But once you get it updated on your by the FAA and your facility directory, you should go back out and cancel that that permanent NOTAM. Also, we'd mentioned that this is a good example of issue NOTAMs on unusual conditions. So you see here at Jabbar, they have a note, they have in their airport directory, they say, we've got migratory birds on in the vicinity of the airport, all quads. Very common one. We see deer, we see coyotes, we see all stuff. So it's not, that's a usual NOTAM. So you wouldn't issue a NOTAM on migratory birds unless it was unusual. What that may be is an increased activity, a different, you know, if it's normally starlings and all of a sudden you've got cranes, you know, that a large bird out there, you might put something like that up there. But your published data is your usual data at your airport. Just wanted to show you this information. And we come over here, I'm kind of running out of time. So this is the FAA's version, but all these third party out there, Jepson, Garmin, here we've got, here's AirNav. AirNav grabs that data. There's the same information for it. Here is, what have we got? FlightAware. Here's FlightAware's information. So this is all public information. They can go up there and update this. So that's why it is important to keep that information updated at your airport. But if you've ever went to NOTAM search, we talked about it. I'm going to put in all the Wichita airports here. I'm not going to spend a lot of time, but you can see what we got. Cessna there. We got Beach and Jabara. So I can look at all of these airports at one time, hit search, and every available NOTAM for those airports will pop up. And you can see what these look like in this case right here. Very easy to see. A lot of NOTAMs at those airports. You can search your single airport, but I just wanted to point this out that you are familiar with NOTAM search and what's going on out there. Here you see we got a perm NOTAM out there at Cessna. Automation Weather Broadcast Systems changed too. We got the phone number. As soon as they get that information published, they should go back in here and delete that perm NOTAM. That's a great example of a perm NOTAM and using the system. So before I move on, well, you know what? I am going to give a short. This is NOTAM Manager. I'll give just a short one since we're running out of time. I want to make sure we have time for questions at the end. Let me log in real quick. And by the way, I told you there is a test site. This is what that test site looks like. And it looks exactly like the live site. It performs exactly like the live site. So it's a great tool to train yourself. You know, you're going to watch me. And I say this to almost every airport that I train, you know, watching me is not the same as going in on your own and playing with this and understanding how quickly it is. I pulled up Jabara Airport. They don't have any NOTAM Manager NOTAMs at this time, but I'll just issue a NOTAM. I'm sorry, this is the test site, so there wouldn't be anything there anyway. Everything is based on keywords. We've already talked about keywords. You can issue through NOTAM Manager, you're able to issue NOTAMs on items that touch the airport: aerodrome, apron, obstruction, runway, taxiway. And it's very simple. I highlight aerodrome, it'll only be Jabbar, that'll be my only option, and I can close it. I can create that NOTAM. And the only other item that's going to be required for this is that period of validity, that time frame we talked about. I'm going to put just some generic values in here so we can keep looking at items. But as you build the NOTAM, there's the time frame. NOTAM Manager is really good because I can get very specific. I don't want to, the airport's not closed. Let's say I just want to close it to touch and go landings. I can add that in. You don't have to have a lot of aviation knowledge with this program. If you know what you're trying to, if you just know what you're trying to convey, that's what I'm going to teach you, is how to train yourself where you can go this. We can over here and look at the NOTAM itself. I know it's probably small, maybe hard to see, but I'll try to blow it up a little bit. There, over there in Jabara, the aerodrome airport closed to touch and go landings. In the West Coast, one we see I'm going to delete all this information out. The West Coast, what we see a lot, especially, what we've seen lately, is an airport closed except for, and this is down in my exceptions field, except for firefighting and life flight. I forgot to add it. Sorry, I'm talking to myself. And life flight. So I've added this in. This is a very common mountain area with fires on the that are out there. The aerodrome airport closed except firefighting aircraft and life flight aircraft. NOTAM Manager allows that at your fingertips. You don't have to pick up the phone as long as you have access to a desktop computer, tablet, laptop, whatever it is. There's not a phone app. Obviously, airports all across the country use their phone, but since it doesn't have an app, it doesn't look quite as good. A lot of people have tablets they have in their cars, their trucks, while they're out on the airport. This will, it looks great on a tablet. Gives you that opportunity to just immediately issue that NOTAM. As soon as I come over here, and I'm going to sit there and show you. I still have times in. If I submit this, it's going to let me submit because it is a practice site, but I submit it, and immediately, that quickly, that NOTAM would be published. That's how quickly that it actually goes out into the NAS. Everyone can see that. So here's this NOTAM. We said that you are in control of your NOTAM. So let's say, if you're here and you want to say, I need to edit this, I'm just going to, I know I'm getting a little more into it than I want to, but I'm going to show you how you can replace the NOTAM. I can proceed it, and I'm going to add an operation. I'm going to add in emergency. So now there's a NOTAM. Firefighting, life flight, and emergency. Let's submit. So you see what's happened here. This is a test site, so it occasionally doesn't work. There it is. So immediately, that quickly, I cancel the old NOTAM, and I have a brand new NOTAM, a new NOTAM number. Remember we talked about those, February 002 for this airport, and the new information. This is how the FAA wants airports to issue NOTAMs. We find that airports, when they get on NOTAM Manager, one of the whole ideas behind the webinar was, that, Ray was saying that, a lot of airports don't feel comfortable issuing NOTAMs. They don't go out there, that they don't feel like they have the knowledge to issue them. So, tools such as this will give you that knowledge and allow you to go out there and, get that information out to the flying public, even if it's as mundane as, mowing adjacent the runway. We've already, we saw those two examples that it is a vital part of getting information out into the National Airspace System. I said I'd at least go through surface conditions before I run out of time. I'm going to do that very quickly. And I'm going to show you how easy that is. Surface conditions are directional, meaning you see I have both ends of the runway and I have single runways. So even if you don't know a lot about, how to issue a field condition NOTAM, you don't feel like you have aviation knowledge, you don't really need to. All you need to know is be able to look out and know what you need. So we've said already that as part of that Southwest crash, they created this matrix that breaks the runway up into thirds. So, what'll happen a lot of times is as at airports that are landing a lot of planes still with, your touchdown point will be different than your midfields. If you have a tree line that obscures it, you may not have some of the snow blow on it that some of the other ones do. That's why, the runway is not the same all the time. But look, just for ease of this conversation, we're going to say that it's the same everywhere. And it is 100%. That means how much the runway is covered of, let's just say 1 inch, and there's wet snow. So we add the component. Now that means I've added it to that third. So I'm going to copy it. So we already said it's the same, the whole runway. And now we copy it. So now every single third of the runway, touchdown, midpoint, rollout, have a value. That's what the NOTAM will look like. And you see that it has, remember that RCAM, that runway condition assessment matrix. NOTAM Manager knows what that is, and it's calculated these scores based on what you put on the runway. So it's a 333. I'm going to scroll down. You're going to see a lot of other information. I know a lot of your airports don't treat fields. You don't, you don't plow. You don't do anything else. This gives you the ability to do it. So here's where you can put the widths. You have the ability to put braking action, but just so you know, because of that, braking action is not part of the NOTAM itself. It's going to go back to the takeoff and landing assessment team. They're going to look at it. They're going to make sure that that braking action corresponds to what the matrix says, but it's not part of the NOTAM at all. The only other required information is this observation time, and then again, more information we can put in. None of this is required. It's just getting more information out to the pilot. So we've completed that NOTAM. That's what it looks like.
Hey, Kenneth, can I jump in real quick?
Yes, sir. Go.
I think one thing that's important to kind of look at, the NOTAM for that runway condition is directional. Which direction do you pick? Pilots land into the wind. And for, people that are not necessarily in this field or may not be experienced with issuing NOTAMs, pilots land into the wind. So if you pick a runway direction that has a headwind, and that will be your first third. That's where you'll start. That's where you'll issue that NOTAM using that runway designator. And that will be, your first third, second third, and then third third. And as you can see the coverage there, 100% of 1 inch wet snow, that's on that first third of whichever runway that you selected. If there is no wind, then you likely have a calm wind runway that is in that chart supplement or your, also called facilities directory or previously called. So you have a calm wind runway, and that's what you would use if there is no wind. But how you would select which runway to start with or the runway designator, that's how you would select it when you're entering your runway condition NOTAM.
Yeah, very good point, Ray. Or like Ray said, if you have an instrument approach to one, obviously during snow, you're probably going to do an instrument approach. Just so you know, you could not, like in this case, if I issue this FICON for runway 18, I cannot issue one on 36. You can't have field conditions going on two different runways or on a closed runway. But in this instance, if I put it out for 18, but there is a pilot comes in, he wants to land 36, it is not you as the airport operator's responsibility to issue a new NOTAM. It's the expectation that the pilot can interpolate these values. So obviously, if this is the touchdown for 18, the first third, the midpoint for 18, and the rollout for 1/3, it's expected the pilot is able to reverse those numbers and get the values on runway 36. As an airport operator, it's not expected that you go and change that NOTAM and go the other direction. Very good point, Ray. Well, tell you what, I want to save a little bit of time for questions. So thank you very much for your time. Like I said, use me as a point of contact if you have questions outside of this. Ray, I'll let you moderate and see if we have any questions, and we'll go on from here.
That sounds good. I do have a couple of other things to add, but are there any questions for Kenneth or Jordan so far? Please unmute. Feel free to unmute yourself right now and ask the question. Okay, I'll continue on. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh yeah, sorry about that. Hey, you guys may have answered this question already, but will this presentation be available to us later on?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Yes, so
perfect,
Kenneth will provide the presentation, and this entire meeting will be recorded and posted on KDOT Aviation's YouTube channel.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
One thing on that runway condition, one thing to keep in mind, some of those fields on the bottom that become very important is wind drifts, snow drifts, snow banks. When you're clearing snow, you're going to get potentially snowbanks. You'll get drifting snow that's thicker in certain areas, so you can note that information there. Another thing something to consider before you start clearing snow, go out to the various parts of the field, go out to the runway, do the inspection there, get the condition, get whatever contaminant is on that runway, whether it's wet snow or dry snow, whether it's ice, whatever contaminant you have there, take those 3 different measurements and physically go to those 3 different areas, because you will find a lot of times it is different. But take those measurements, take the measurements for your taxiways, your aprons, all of those various areas, file the NOTAMs, and also don't forget to file a work in progress NOTAM. So that's an additional NOTAM that, in addition to the runway condition and the FICON or field condition NOTAMs, the work in progress basically tells people that, hey, there is work on this runway or work on this pavement. Work in progress can be used for snow clearing activities. Can also be used in the spring and summer months for mowing activities or construction activities if you have those going on as well. So keep that in mind when you're looking at those NOTAMs. Perfect. I appreciate that, Kenneth, for showing that.
Yep.
Any questions? There's a couple of other slides if we don't have any questions. I'm going to go ahead and share then. Kenneth, keep that queued up just in case we need to come back to it. And then
Okay, will do.
I'll share a couple of slides. So what are NOTAMs? I think Kenneth and Jordan did a great job with describing what NOTAMs are and when to use them. They are a communication tool, a way to convey information to airport users in a timely manner, vital to safety, a way to help pilots make that go, no-go decision, and also an airport's responsibility. However, NOTAMs are not, let me get my presentation going here. NOTAMs are not the only communication tool. So I would use this as a way to convey that information to pilots, but unfortunately, the reality is some pilots don't check NOTAMs, and again, that's on them, but don't assume that someone is going to have the desired effect just because you filed a NOTAM. There are other ways to also communicate that information. If you have an automated weather observation system, a lot of those systems will allow you to put a recording at the end of that, just to, again, convey, hey, snow clearing activities are currently underway. Be on the lookout for men and equipment in this area. Don't forget to reset those NOTAMs after you're done. Otherwise, the people flying in will be really angry with you because it extends the time that the AWOS recording plays. But email your airport tenants, keep them updated. One of the things that I personally heard from airport tenants is they appreciated the constant update. When you're clearing, before you clear, file your NOTAM, do your AWOS recording, send out an email to your airport tenant base to say, these are the conditions, these are the areas that we're going to clear first. We'll give you an update whenever we have that. Post on social media to the same effect. Um, you may need to, if you have a large construction project, you might need to mail information out to your tenants well in advance. Communicate all of the changes to your airport using these various tools, and you can also use your website and other forms. They're not a get out of jail free card, so you still must exercise caution. Just because you filed a NOTAM and you did everything else, you still have to look up for aircraft that are landing. Don't say that, hey, I filed a NOTAM, that pilot should know. No, they have the right of way. So make sure that your crew operating in the airport environment fully understands that to look up for aircraft. If you're mowing and you see an aircraft either getting ready to take off or getting ready to land, make sure that you pull way away from that runway so they understand that you understand and you see them where they're at. You can add an email, so when you issue a NOTAM, it's sent to those emails at the same time you file. All right, thank you, Patrick, for that information. Um, Make sure that your crew exercises caution. Don't think of NOTAMs as the be-all, end-all of notifications. NOTAMs are not a one-and-done effort as well. When you're out clearing snow, the conditions are going to change. You're going to clear the runway, or maybe now the runway is not 3 inches of wet snow. Maybe it's down to, half an inch. Your conditions will change, periodically change those conditions. FICON NOTAMs, especially runway NOTAMs, are only good for 24 hours, but you should update those NOTAMs as the conditions change. You should also update your taxi lane, your taxiways, your aprons, all of those NOTAMs. And also keep in mind that there are low wing and high wing aircraft. Be mindful of where you put those snow piles, and then file a NOTAM for that. So if you have a 6 foot or 8 foot snow pile, that is an obstruction. That's a hazard that can damage an aircraft wing or prop. Make sure that you have your snow piles NOTAMed for their location as well. So be consistent in using them so your airport users can depend on them, and then update them as necessary. So we've discussed a lot of these, but potential uses, and again, potential, that's not all of the uses out there, but conditions of runways, taxiways, aprons, piles, drifts, and banks, lights and signage obscured. If you're getting a ton of snow and you're clearing that snow, and now your runway edge lights no longer show, you need to be mindful of that, but also if that does happen, you do need to file a NOTAM for those obscured lights. And again, don't forget work in progress. Any closures for snow or ice. If you have multiple runway exits, for instance, and you're focusing only on 2 of the exits, you can close areas of the airport until you get to them if they're going to be a hazard, or if you can't get to them right away. So kind of have a plan regarding snow and ice for your airport, and discuss that plan locally, and then communicate that to your airport users. Anytime you're mowing, don't forget to do the work in progress, construction. We talked about outages, fireworks, pyrotechnics, field burning near the airport. Those can obscure, or those can be a hazard, or they can also obscure approaches or departures. So keep that in mind if you're getting field burning right at the end of the runway. Any drone activity by the airport, consider filing a NOTAM and working out with the drone operators when they're going to be operating. That way you can file a NOTAM. Are they operating high enough to be a hazard? Likely not, but don't make any assumptions, because they can go up to 400 feet, and you can have low flying, or aircraft that through the transition can take a while to get up to altitude. You can have powered parachutes, you can have trikes, you can have gyrocopters that may take a time to get to altitude. So even those low flying drones might still be a hazard to certain aircraft. If you're looking at closures, we kind of discussed a little bit on specified closures, but if you're if you have a construction project, consider a prior permission required closure, especially if you can get people out of the way if you receive 1 or 2 hours notice. The way that would work is you would file that NOTAM. It's a closure except for 1 hour or 2 hours or 15 minutes, however, much time you think you need to be able to pull the crew back safely. But you can file, instead of a complete closure, a prior permission required closure. That way, if someone wants to take off or needs to take off or needs to land, they can contact you either by phone or maybe on the radio within that time frame to request a slot to be able to come into the airport. You can also consider closure to fixed wing aircraft, or specify what you want to do. Um, if you do a total airport closure, then it cuts out all of the options for that air ambulance or some of those other operators that may be able to use the airport otherwise. So if it's not safe for fixed wing aircraft, but it could potentially work out for rotor wing, consider a fixed wing aircraft specific closure while you deal with whatever the issue is. Consider closing the runway versus the entire airfield again to allow for those other operations. If you have a change in staffing level, if you're normally staffed Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, but because of whatever reason you're not going to be, the airport will not be attended on Thursday and Friday this week, file that NOTAM so people know that, during that time frame, they shouldn't expect to have services available, or any other safety related items. So those are potential usages for NOTAMs. Any questions so far, or comments or suggestions? You guys are pretty quiet. I'm not sure if anyone's still awake or not. So
Ray,
yes.
this is Kimberly from Kearney County. I have a group text message put together for my hospital, EMS crew, sheriff's department, and the local road and bridge department. We're all in a group text, and I let all of them know whenever we have any kind of closures or NOTAMs issued, to help out with medevac services, or in case there's a emergency of some sort. Everybody is in the emergency departments around here are already aware of our current situations out at the airport, whether it be ice, snow, whatever. And that's all. It's been super helpful for them.
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. That's a great idea.
Well, while they were talking about that, Ray, I was going to show you real quick. This is what it kind of looks like if you utilize NOTAM Manager sending emails. You see, this is the live site. So anytime that Jabara issues a NOTAM, all of these individuals they've listed, and this would go up to 140. So you could individual pilots could get this. However, as soon as you activate a NOTAM at that airport, they all get that NOTAM information. So NOTAM Manager will save you some time and do that. So it's a nice resource in that manner.
That is awesome. I did not know about that. Thank you
Yep.
very much.
Yeah.
Any other questions, comments, or concerns? You guys can email me. I will send out the presentation to the group email. So you'll have Kenneth's presentation as well as mine. And we'll post a recording in a few days on the KDOT Aviation YouTube channel. If you have any comments or suggestions for future workshops, please let us know that as well. We're here to serve your needs and help you have the resources you need to make informed decisions for your communities. Thank you very much for giving us your time. And if there's nothing else, we will sign off.
Thank you, Ray, for having us today. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Kenneth and Jordan. I appreciate you very
You bet.
much.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.